the way in which your team debates new proposals, thinking about how we change our public conversation. And so as an entry point into that, debate requires that we engage with the conflicting idea directly, respectfully, face to face. The foundation of debate is rebuttal, the idea that you make a claim and I provide a response and you respond to my response. Without rebuttal, it's not debate, it's just pontificating. And I had originally imagined that the most successful debaters, really excellent persuaders, must be great at going to extremes. They must have some magical ability to make the polarizing palatable. And it took me a really long time to figure out that the opposite is actually true. People who disagree the most productively start by finding common ground, no matter how narrow it is. They identify the thing that we can all agree on and go from there. The right to an education, equality between all people, the importance of safer communities. What they're doing is inviting us into what psychologists call shared reality. And shared reality is the antidote to alternative facts. The conflict, of course, is still there. That's why it's a debate. Shared reality just gives us a platform to start to talk about it. But the trick of debate is that you end up doing it directly, face to face across the table. And research backs up that that really matters. Professor Juliana Schroeder at UC Berkeley and her colleagues have research that suggests that listening to someone's voice as they make a controversial argument is literally humanizing. It makes it easier to engage with what that person has to say. So, step away from the keyboards, start conversing. And if we were to expand that notion a little bit, nothing is stopping us from pressing pause on our parade of keynote speeches, the sequence of very polite panel discussions, and replacing some of that with a structured debate. All of our conferences could have at their centerpiece a debate over the biggest, most controversial ideas in the field. Each of our weekly team meetings could devote 10 minutes to a debate about a proposal to change the way in which that team works. And as innovative ideas go, this one is both easy and free. You could start tomorrow. Once we're inside this shared reality, debate also requires that we separate ideas from the identity of the person discussing them. So in formal debate, nothing is a topic unless it is controversial, that we should raise the voting age, outlaw gambling. But debaters don't choose their sides. So that's why it makes no sense to do what 10-year-old Julia did. Attacking the identity of the person making the argument is irrelevant because they didn't choose it. Your only winning strategy is to engage with the best, clearest, least personal version of the idea. And it might sound impossible or naive to imagine that you could ever take that notion outside the high school auditorium. We spend so much time dismissing ideas as Democrat or Republican, rejecting proposals because they came from headquarters or from a region that we think is not like ours. But it is possible. When I work with teams trying to come up with the next big idea or solve a really complex problem, I start by asking them, all of them, to submit ideas anonymously. So by way of illustration, 2 years ago, I was working with multiple government agencies to generate new solutions to reduce long-term unemployment, which is one of those really wicked, sticky, well-studied public policy problems. So exactly as I described right at the beginning, potential solutions were captured from everywhere. We aggregated them. Each of them was produced on an identical template. At this point, they all look the same. They have no separate identity. And then, of course, discussed, picked over, refined, finalized. And at the end of that process, more than 20 of those new ideas are presented to the cabinet ministers responsible for consideration. But more than half of those, the originator of those ideas, was someone who might have a hard time getting the ear of a policy advisor, or who, because of their identity, might not be taken entirely seriously if they did. Folks who answered the phones, assistants who managed calendars, representatives from agencies who weren't always trusted. Imagine if our news media did the same thing. You can kind of see it now, a weekly cable news segment with a big policy proposal on the table that doesn't call it liberal or conservative, or a series of op-eds for and against a big idea that don't tell you where the writers worked. Our public conversations, even our private disagreements, can be transformed by debating ideas rather than discussing identity. And then the thing that debate allows us to do as human beings is open ourselves, really open ourselves up to the possibility that we might be wrong, the humility of uncertainty. One of the reasons it is so hard to disagree productively is because we become attached to our ideas. We start to believe that we own them and that by extension, they own us. But eventually, if you debate long enough, you will switch sides. You'll argue for and against the expansion of the welfare state, for and against compulsory voting. And that exercise flips a kind of cognitive switch. The suspicions that you hold about people who espouse beliefs that you don't have starts to evaporate, because you can imagine yourself stepping into those shoes. And as you're stepping into those, you're embracing the humility of uncertainty, the possibility of being wrong. And it's that exact humility that makes us better decision makers. Neuroscientist and psychologist Mark Leary at Duke University and his colleagues have found that people who are able to practice, and it is a skill, what those researchers call intellectual humility, are more capable of evaluating a broad range of evidence, are more objective when they do so, and become less defensive when confronted with conflicting evidence. All attributes that we want in our bosses, colleagues, discussion partners, decision makers, all virtues that we would like to claim for ourselves. And so as we're embracing that humility of uncertainty, we should be asking each other, all of us, a question. Our debate moderators, our news anchors should be asking it of our elected representatives and candidates for office too. What is it that you have changed your mind about and why? What uncertainty are you humble about? And this, by the way, isn't some fantasy about how public life and public conversations could work. It has precedent. So, in 1969, beloved American children's television presenter Mr. Rogers sits impaneled before the United States Congressional Subcommittee on Communications, chaired by the seemingly very curmudgeonly John Pastore. And Mr. Rogers is there to make a kind of classic debate case, a really bold proposal, an increase in federal funding for public broadcasting. And at the outset, committee disciplinarian Senator Pastore is not having it. This is about to end really poorly for Mr. Rogers. But patiently, very reasonable American children's television presenter Mr. Rogers sits impaneled before the United States Congressional Subcommittee on Communications, chaired by the seemingly very curmudgeonly John Pastore. And Mr. Rogers is there to make a kind of classic debate case, a really bold proposal, an increase in federal funding for public broadcasting. And at the outset, committee disciplinarian Senator Pastore is not having it. This is about to end really poorly for Mr. Rogers. But patiently, very reasonably, Mr. Rogers makes the case why good quality children's broadcasting, the kinds of television programs that talk about the drama that arises in the most ordinary of families, matters to all of us, even while it costs us. He invites us into a shared reality. And on the other side of that table, Senator Pastore listens, engages, and opens his mind out loud, in public, on the record. Senator Pastore says to Mr. Rogers, you know, I'm supposed to be a pretty tough guy, and this is the first time I've had goosebumps in 2 days. And then later, it looks like you just earned the $20 million. We need many more Mr. Rogers, people with the technical skills of debate and persuasion. But on the other side of that table, we need many, many, many more Senator Pastores. And the magic of debate is that it lets you, it empowers you to be both Mr. Rogers and Senator Pastore simultaneously. When I work with those same teams that we talked about before, I ask them at the outset to pre-commit to the possibility of being wrong, to explain to me and to each other what it would take to change their minds. And that's all about the attitude, not the exercise. Once you start thinking about what it would take to change your mind, you start to wonder why you were quite so sure in the first place. There is so much that the practice of debate has to offer us to how to disagree productively. And we should bring it to our workplaces, our conferences, our city council meetings. And the principles of debate can transform the way that we talk to one another, to empower us to stop talking and to start listening, to stop dismissing and to start persuading, to stop shutting down and to start opening our minds. Thank you so much.
Can you hear me, Virginia?
I can. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can. Are you going to be using your video or not?
I noticed that y'all said before that not using your video is a good idea. So I have a PowerPoint presentation to slide through, and so we don't have to use video. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm going to turn mine off then. Is there anything else I can do to support you?
Let's just try to see if we can get the screen to work correctly.
Okay.
To make sure I'm showing the right screen.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So are you trying to share now? Is that what you're doing?
Oh, I haven't pressed any buttons as of yet. So,
okay.
So share screen one. Okay.
Yeah.
So we got it now?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I can do the video if other people have been doing it. Have they been doing it in other sessions or?
I honestly have had a really busy day, and I've only been able to come to yours and one other person's that I was supporting them with their Zoom. And it varies widely. I tend to recommend it myself. I think you'll get a better connection with your audience, but it's absolutely up to you.
Okay, well, we'll go for it.
Good.
I've got like several different screens up, so as long as everybody can see this, and then I'll pop this into the chat too.
Yeah, perfect.
So somebody's already done the well, it's just a couple of minutes after, and I have it kind of played out so that the first couple of minutes we have together, if you would, in the chat, I've created a link, and when you press the link, it will take you to a Google survey. It's asking you to tell me a couple of things about Creative Commons that you already know. So first things first, please just go ahead and open that up, and we're just going to sit with it for the next couple of minutes before we get started so that I know where you're standing, and we can kind of look back at it at the end of our presentation together. We're going to give it till about 2:05, and then I will start. Okay, well, thank you. We have a couple of responses, so that's good. We're going to look at them at the end of the presentation. Only have about 3 or so responses, and as we're going along, if you think of any questions, just jot them down. I have the chat open as well, so I'll try to monitor that as we go along. But I have a presentation within a presentation, so I'm going to be talking a good bit about how to understand Creative Commons, how you can use it in your life, and how you can, employ some of this knowledge as you move forward. So just to give you a little bit of introduction on myself, there I am. It's one of the nicest pictures I have of myself. I work at the University of South Carolina Upstate. I recently took the reference coordinator's position here, and I've been here for about 7 years. Last January, I took over the I guess you would call me like a copyright officer for the university. I took that duty over because the person who did it before went on to another job. And so at the beginning of last year, I took a certificate course through copyrightlaws.com, and I took the Librarians Coursera and Librarians and Educators Coursera on copyright. And then this fall, I was lucky to be able to be a part of a Creative Commons expert. I guess you would call it more than a workshop. It's a certificate course that's available through the Creative Commons. You work for about 3 months learning the ins and outs of the licenses and the movement and how everything got started. So I was able to complete that at the end of this past year. So one of the things that I wanted to do after completing that was just sort of share that information with people who are interested in Creative Commons and learning how to employ it in their own life. Not only that, I've began doing information literacy type sessions on Creative Commons for our creative majors here at the university. So far I've had a class for an intro to digital music. I did one there, 2 for printmaking. I have one for graphic arts coming up. And so I get to go to the classes and teach the students how to have a little bit more control over their works when they put them online. So all that being said, I do want to just put this out here that I'm not a lawyer. And I'm by no means an expert as it goes to copyright. And so do not take what I say today as legal advice. Everything that I've put together for us is freely available online. And so you can definitely reference it again. I will give you all of the presentation slides and links at the end of our time together. All right, so that's a brief introduction of myself. And we're going to get into our next slide, which is copyright. So to start out talking about Creative Commons, unfortunately, we do have to talk about copyright to an extent. I wanted you to have sort of like a basic understanding of sorts as we move forward. And if I sound kind of raspy, it's because allergies, my goodness, the pollen these days, it's just really out there. I think it's around the 70s here in South Carolina right now. So um, it goes from cold to hot, cold to hot. So just a little bit of copyright understanding. So the first thing that we need to know is copyright means all rights reserved. And so that means that you have the exclusive right to copy your work. It's a bundle of rights. So when you see the circle with the C inside, that means all rights reserved. I find that a lot of our students can't understand, can't see the difference between copyright and Creative Commons symbols. And so we talk about what is copyright. It's the exclusive right to make authorization, to authorize a translation of your work, to make copies of your work, to public perform your work, or to make adaptations and new arrangements of your work. And so you once you have created something and it's in a fixed form, then you have a exclusive bundle of rights. And so what are things that are copyrightable? Things that are copyrightable, that means books, plays, literary artistic works, drawings, skits, movies, translations, adaptations, arrangements, music, literary artistic works, collections, any kind of artistic work like that. And so what are things that aren't copyrightable? So titles and names, ideas, works by the federal government, which we know that the federal government does have things that are not copyrightable, but there are also some things in the federal government that are copyrightable. If they put out a work for hire, then that person that created that map may still hold the copyright to that map. And so that still has a bit of a gray area as it goes for copyright. So also, items without any reasonable amount of creativity are not copyrightable. And so let's think about it this way. You can't copyright the month of January, right? You could copyright the picture at the beginning, but you can't copyright the month. So what are the criteria for copyright protection? So your piece of work needs to have originality. It also needs to have, it needs to be in a fixed form. And so that means it can't be an idea, like we said before. And then the third thing is it has to have a minimal amount of creativity. So if in this presentation today, I decide to tell you some crazy story that I'm really interested in writing one day, and it has all these incredible characters in it, and I tell it to you, and we didn't record this, and I just told it to you, then that idea for a book would not be able to be copyrighted because it's just still an idea. But once I write it down or perform it or put it in a fixed form, then we can make sure that it's copyrightable because it is in a fixed form. And so there are some things that we can notice about the history of copyright. So copyright began at the Statute of Anne in 1710. It was a long time ago. The easiest way for me to explain it is a long time ago in 1710, there was a stationery's guild who printed the Bible, and they had exclusive rights to print the Bible, and they were the only people who could print it, and that was the only place that you could get it from. And those rights were very restrictive. And so Parliament said that they would not give them the rights to continue in that manner. And so they went back, they amended the act under Queen Anne and said that publishers could have more rights under the Statute of Anne. And so copyright was extended for them to be able to have the rights to print their books for 14 years. And so, and in England, after 14 years, it would go into the public domain. If you're still alive, it would be something different after 14 years. And so in the United States, we enacted the same type of act in 1790, but we said after 14 years, if you're still alive, you can renew those rights. There are also other things, other types of things in history that are of note, like the Berne Convention. There is no international copyright law, but we do have the Berne Convention, which happened in Bern, Switzerland in 1886. And this is where we got our first understanding of how copyright was the life of the creator plus 50 years. That's how long the protection was. The U.S. did not go into it until 1989. So that was a long time for us to not actually get into the Berne Convention. After that time, we also had the Sonny Bono Act that happened in 1989. We all remember Sonny Bono, Cher's husband, but at that time he had remarried and he was in the legislation. He wanted to extend copyright to last forever. He never wanted copyright to end. And so, but instead, in 1998, the Sonny Bono Copyright Term Extension Act was extended 20 years. So that's why we have copyright protection for the life of the creator plus 70 years. And so this means that entire time, they are the only people who have the exclusive rights to their creation that we mentioned above. And so that's what we have right now as it goes to copyright. Another thing of note is copyright protection is automatic. It feels kind of nuts that that's how it is, especially in the digital age. But like I said, if your item has originality, it's in a fixed form, even if it's digital, and it has minimal amount of creativity, it is protected by copyright. You do not have to register it with the Copyright Office, and you can, and it would be helpful in a court of law, but you don't have to. You do not have to put the copyright symbol beside it. Will it help you? It will, but you don't have to. So that's something to note, that copyright protection is incredibly hard to understand. There are so many moving different parts, especially when most people think that it's not automatic. So that's just a couple things to be of note of copyright, because we can't talk about copyright protection without, or Creative Commons without talking about copyright. So there are two exemptions of copyright that we know for sure. The first one is the public domain. So what is really important to note is we haven't had anything go into the public domain for a very long time, and that's because of the Sonny Bono Act. So at the beginning of this year, many things from 1923 went into the public domain. And so what does that mean? It means that these works are now in the public domain and they exist without any type of copyright restriction. So there are different ways that materials and items can go into the public domain. So either the copyright expires, which now it finally has, because we've met the Sonny Bono Act restrictions. The second one is maybe the holder fails to comply with any kind of formality with copyright registration, which kind of gets a little sticky when you're figuring out who is holding the copyright. Say, let's take Batman, for example. Batman from a long time ago, Adam West. So who owns the copyright there? It was a comic book, but then it was also a TV series. Do the people who wrote that TV series own the copyright, or do the people who produced it? And if it's the people who produced it, Sony never dies, Disney never dies. They just continually re-up these copyrights. So it's harder for things like that to go in the public domain. So the third thing is the work is not entitled to protection. And remember, that goes to the government, or it doesn't have enough creativity, maps and things like that. And then lastly, you can dedicate your work to the public domain if you want. So I wanted to show you this link. It should open up for me. This is a pretty good website. It will be listed on the presentation. You can see all of the different things that I've went into the public domain. I don't know if you are like me, but it's been pretty difficult for me to understand what's in the public domain and what isn't. But they have this right at the beginning when you open it up, and it shows you all the different things that are open and freely available to use and that are in the public domain. Okay, so we're going to go back over here. Moving right along to the fair use doctrine. All right, so things can get a little, again, the gray area of copyright and Creative Commons. So fair use is another exemption that we are all pretty familiar with. There are 4 points of the fair use doctrine. The first one is purpose and character of use. And what that means is if you're using something that is all rights reserved, that means you are using it in a manner that maybe might be for nonprofit or for educational use. It can, and you're being transformative with it. You're changing it. You're making it different in some other way. That means that it would err on the side of fair use, that you're using it under that doctrine. The second one would be the nature of the work. And so, are you using something that's factual, or are you using something that is fictional and creative, opposed to using something that's a published work or an unpublished work? Published works and factual works are more likely to skew on the side of fair use and the fair use doctrine. So many of you have probably heard of the 10% rule, which is likely because most people I've come in contact with have at some point in their life heard of the 10% rule. So I always love to say this, but the 10% rule is not a real rule. So the third point of fair use is the amount used. And when you think about it this way, it's a little bit easier to understand. So in a court case, they said, they weren't trying to give a certain amount of use, or they weren't saying you can use 10% of this or 1,000 words of a book. That means you're in fair use. What they really meant was it's like a guideline, because if you took a photograph, a copyrighted photograph, and you said, I'm going to use 10% of this photo, I might think 10% of it is just 3 inches of it, but someone else might think that 10% of it is, just a part of it that's really important to them. And so the 10% rule is just too gray of an area to kind of rely on. Really what you can do is the amount you're using having effect on the market, which is the fourth point that we have listed. So if you're using a work and you're having an effect on the market, then it will not really err on the side of fair use. So if you took someone's photograph, you use 10% of it, but then you're selling it and you're making more money than the original work, that's having a real effect on the market. So fair use is a little hard to understand. There's a lot of gray areas. There are a lot of checklists that are out there as well. And so I always say that it's really important to really research if you're going to be using a copyrighted material to make sure that you're looking through all the different points of fair use. All right, so the next thing we have listed here is we're going to start our portion of Creative Commons. So with all this being said, we've talked about the history of copyright, and we've talked about the exemptions of copyright. Now, Creative Commons is not an exemption of copyright. It exists with copyright, in conjunction of it, I would like to say. So Creative Commons gives people who are creating things more control over their works. Creative Commons began January 15th, 2001 in response to the Sonny Bono Act that was in 1998. So Lawrence Lessig saw that the the act was going through, he felt that it was incredibly restrictive because it limited the number of works that were being scheduled to go into the public domain, and saw this as a real restriction to how our culture thrives and changes and learns from one another. And so they put in a lawsuit against the Sonny Bono Act, and they lost. So because we all know that the Sonny Bono Act is still in, so they had to move forward from there. And so the Creative Commons is a nonprofit, and they are a nonprofit organization that supports the licenses, gives tools and technologies to help people use them in their everyday life. And then also they are working very hard to grow the movement, not only here in America, but all over the world. And so when I took my class this past fall, there was someone who was in my class that was on the other side of Machu Picchu. They couldn't always log in on the internet, which was pretty rough for them, but it was pretty interesting to see all the people all over the globe working in this space to provide more support to a global movement of supporting open access resources, which earlier in the day, I was able to attend the open access resources session for North Carolina. So something else that the Creative Commons supports are all of these listed, the global movement, the supporting an open source software, open innovation, which means they have training and mentorship online freely available. Open science, which gives people research papers and things like that will also fold into open educational resources. So they're not just about the licenses, they are about an entire global movement of open access sharing resources. And so what's the most important thing for us to talk about today are the licenses. I want you to be able to understand them and use them in your own work. So what I have listed on my presentation when you come back here later is you just click it and it takes you out to a presentation in a presentation. So this takes you to the SWAY that I've created to help you understand how the licenses work. All right, I'm gonna take a sip of my drink. All right, so let's get into these licenses. So the licenses are for creators who want to give different permissions to their works. And so I want you to think about this in two perspectives. The first one is showing maybe this to an artist that's in your public library, or sharing it with a student that is working on a particular project that they're going to put on the internet. The other way that you can think about it is any kind of graphic or flyer or LibGuide or video that you create for your library. You can plug some of these Creative Commons licenses in on them so that people understand how they can use them. Okay, so let's think about it in that way. All right, so Creative Commons licenses have a 3-layer design, and I always like to explain it like a taco. So the first is the legal code, and that's like the taco shell, okay? And so this is the base layer that holds the licenses together. It means that these licenses are enforceable in court. Okay, so they're just as enforceable as copyright is. Now, there haven't been many court cases that have went into, the actual courtroom, but they are legal and they are enforceable in court. All right, so our second layer is like the taco meat, okay, and it's the most important layer that everybody wants on their tacos. So if you want beef, tofu, or fish, it's the most important. So these are the common deeds, and we're going to discuss each part of that together. And the third part is the you would say cheese or lettuce that goes on top, and that means it's the machine readable format. So all of these licenses have the capability to be read by search engines, by computers in any way. They know they're able to be read, so that if you put your LibGuide up and you put it with a Creative Commons license, when it's searched online, they'll know how to be able to use it and give you those rights very easily. All right, so we're going to roll on down. So there are 4 licensing elements, and I'm going to show you there are 6 licenses, but there are 4 licensing elements. The first one is by. Okay, so if you see this little man, it means by. And so CC by, that means attribution required, and it is included in every single license that we have. Okay, so in every single Creative Commons license, you must attribute the creator, always. Okay. The second one we have, it looks like a backwards C with a arrow, okay? And that means share alike. So if you see this, it means if you use my photograph and it says share alike, you must share it in the same way, okay? So that doesn't mean that you can take my work and then say no one can use it. You have to share it in the same way. Okay. The third element is non-commercial. We know this one, no $. So non-commercial means that you can only use this work with no commercial purposes, so you cannot make any money off of it. All right, and then our last one is no derivatives, and this means you cannot change it in any way. And so you cannot make any additions to it, you can't filter it, you can't crop it, you can't do any of that. You have to keep it intact and original. So these are the 4 elements of the licenses, but there are 6 Creative Commons licenses. Now, I've created this presentation with pictures of my own cat in it because I think that people enjoy seeing him. His name is Boss, and he's a baby. He's a big cat, but what I've done is provided examples on how you could use these licenses. So the very first license of our 6 that we have here are the CC BY. This is the least restrictive of all the licenses. So if I saw this picture of my cat right here online, I could do anything with it because it has been, this license has been attached to it. So I could change it, I could filter it, I could put it on my website, I could put it on a t-shirt and sell it, I could do it anyway, anything that I want with it. But I have to attribute the creator. And so I put the citation elements here so you could see what that kind of looks like. So this is our least restrictive license. All right. So for our second license, we have CC BY share alike. So this means that, again, we have to attribute the creator, but we have to share it in the same way. So here's my original picture of Boss. If I put this on the internet and I say, you can use this in any way you want, but you have to share it in the same way that I did, then someone could come, they could change it in some way, like put the little hearts on the picture like you see, and they can remix it, they can make money off of it, they can do anything like that, but that they have to include my name and then they have to share it in the same way. So they have to let whomever take their photograph and change it, make money off of it in the same way. And so you can see my 2 citations are listed here. So it's a little more restrictive, but not that much. All right. Our next one is CC BY non-commercial. Okay, so this is where things start getting a little bit more confusing, a little more complicated. So you must attribute the creator. You can only use this creation for non-commercial uses, and as long as you're not making money or anything like that, then this license can be easily used. So you take the original picture that I have here of Boss, and it's he's sitting on a quilt. So if I wanted to use that picture and put it on my website, I would need to make sure that I wasn't selling anything on my website, and there weren't any ads on my website either. That would be really important. And so here we put him on a website that's offering free quilting classes, and we make sure that you are citing the creator from the beginning, and then that would be fine because we're not making any money off of it. Okay, here we go. So our next license is CC BY, non-commercial, and share alike. So this one's just a smidge different than before. You must attribute the creator. You cannot use any money, and you have to let other people take it in the same way. And so I have an example here. The original was a flyer. So there's Boss, and he's got his little head in a trash can. And so if I saw that flyer and I saw that it had the Creative Commons license, if I took a picture of it and put it on my Instagram page, then it would be on an Instagram page that has, it's not a business profile, and it could be reposted in the same way. Somebody else could take that picture and use it in the same way. So I'm sharing it and letting other people share it in the same way. All right. Our next one is CC BY, no derivatives. So you must attribute the creator again, but this one's kind of interesting. So you can't change anything from it. Okay, you can't make any derivative of it. You cannot adapt it in any way. You cannot filter it. You cannot crop it. You can't change it in any way. But if we take my original picture here from Boss and we put it on a t-shirt and attribute me and make money off of it, then that's okay. I didn't change it in any way. I used the piece exactly the same way. And you can use this work even commercially, as long as you don't modify the original work. All right, and so here is our last one. It is no derivatives license. It means CC BY, no non-commercial, no derivatives. And so that is the most restrictive license of them all. So you cannot change it in any way, and you can't make money off of it in any way either. And so here's my original. It's just a photo of him looking out the window. And so if we put it on a non-commercial website, maybe even for educational purposes, without selling any ads or selling any kind of products, and we attribute the original creator, then that is fulfilling the license's requirements. So this one is our most restrictive license. So how do you use these in your own, life? So you can create and design your own Creative Commons license. It's incredibly easy. All you have to do is you go to creativecommons.org and /choose, and it takes you to this website that's listed here. It asks you a set of questions. They're very easy to understand. So would you like to allow adaptations of your work? How allow adaptations of your work to be shared. So if you want them to be changed in any way and you want them to be shared, then you would say yes, you can make changes to my work as long as you share it. Or you could say no, you can't make changes to my work, and then you would say yes if you just want to make changes to my work. So you can see how the three different questions are answered. The next one is, would you allow commercial uses of your work? And so that means, can people make money off of it? So you'd say yes or no. And so as you click along in these questions, you can see that below the license changes. So this one, we would allow changes of our work as long as they share it, but they can't make any money. And so that gives us CC BY, no non-commercial, share alike. Okay? And so if we say allow adaptations of your works just to be shared, that means they don't have to share it in the same way. And so you can answer these questions back and forth, and then it will show you if it's a free cultured license or not. So that's fine and good that you can create your license in that way. But what if you want to put it on the internet, which is probably what you'd like to do? You can either copy this is automatically changed along with every time you answer those questions. It will give you the icon that you want to use and the work and the link to the license, legal information to the license. And then it also gives you the metadata or the source code. So you can press over on your other side of your web editing software and put in this embed code. And that's the machine readable portion of this license, so that when you put your photograph on the internet, it will be able to know how people can use this license. All right, so just remember creativecommons.org/choose. We did look at one website where we could find public domain information, but another thing that the Creative Commons has that's really cool is you can search the commons right here. And so when you just go to creativecommons.org, you can search the commons. And this means you can look for images, mostly videos, sound recordings for free. And I'm not sure if you've already found this or looked at it yourself, but you can say I want something to be used for commercial purposes, or modify and adapt and build on. And I feel like this is really helpful when you're trying to create library guides, or maybe a newsletter for your public library, or helping you along in the creative process. You know, you can't break that artistic block and you're trying to figure out what you want to draw out next for your printmaking collection. Then you can come here. We can look for a dog, because I always usually do. And so we searched Pixabay, because this one's pretty fun. This little pug right here, it just gives me every time. So we can see that all of these pictures are on Pixabay, and these are royalty-free pictures. So if we look at our pug here, which is so cute, we can see exactly who created it and then what the license is. Another thing that we can do when we're looking at the Creative Commons licenses, you can look in Google, and it's a little bit different. So it comes back and it looks like this, and it already has our labeled for reuse with modification. So it's listed here. For me, it's terribly difficult to understand how to find images and materials that have been listed with Creative Commons licenses, or they're under the public domain. And so here, by searching the Creative Commons, you can find most of this very easily. But what's most important, and what the Creative Commons nonprofit organization wants people to do, is to incorporate these licenses to their materials, because if you don't, then it won't come up in this search. You see what I mean? Okay, so this is how we understand the Creative Commons licenses. Our next step is I want to briefly show you the resource list that I've created for us. So the first bit that we have here for us is copyright. I have listed a lot of the different educational resources that I have, because if you get into Creative Commons, you likely will be asked questions about copyright. And so some of these things do cost money, but some of them don't. The first one is copyrightlaws.com. This one does cost money, but she does have a lot of free resources listed. So under the free resources, you can search for maybe different questions that you get asked. Here's a simple guide. Watch these different videos. Leslie Ellen Harris is incredibly smart, and she's an expert on copyright, so definitely take a look at that resource. The second one have listed is this book that's a little dated, but still a very good book to rely on. I find that when I have a teacher come up to me and ask, can I use this in my class? Can I scan this and put it online? Then I can look at this book, and it's very easy to look at the index in the back and find an answer for copyright. We have the Copyright for Educators and Librarians free Coursera course. You can work at this on your own pace. I I feel that it was a really good place to begin for a lot of basic materials. So we have also listed here at copyright.com webinars and certificate courses that are available. I just took one for academics. They have a course calendar for educational events. This was difficult for me to find. There isn't very much listed on copyright.gov, and so I would just maybe come back and look at these certificates and the webinars that they have for free. I'm always looking out for something for free. Copyright X is a program that is available in the spring every year where you can apply to take the copyright course at Harvard along with lawyer students for free. So you can look into that, and I'll make sure that that link is clickable. Lastly, for copyright, I have this listed from Information Today, and so it just has a good bit of resources and links that are all right here in one place. I never try to reinvent the wheel, but some of this information seems to be all over the place. Creative Commons expert, so I told you about this at the beginning. In true Creative Commons fashion, you do not have to pay to go through this. You can do it on your own time. Everything is listed under the certificate resources, so they change this each year. So here's all the course content for 2019. And you can go through all of the different Google Drives, see the different projects that people have made. This is what's pretty interesting, I think, because there are so many different creations that you get at the end of it that will that you can use. Like here's a zine. I've never even looked at this, but you can use these because they're all licensed through Creative Commons to share it with other people. At the end of every single one of them, it will tell you how you can share it, how you can use it. So that is the list of Creative Commons the expert resources. I think that that's definitely something that I would do if I had time. And then we looked at the public domain together. And let me see if I can get, okay. So this last link that I have, I'm going to pull it over because I have it up right now. I have created a library guide with all of this information that we went through today. I have it listed on that page. The copyright basics, fair use, the fair use doctrine, how to use it, what it means. There are a lot of really great videos that are listed here too, especially the one right here about the public domain. It's got a lot of cartoons and offers a lot of information. The SWAY presentation that we just looked at for how Creative Commons licenses are explained are listed as well. So it's all listed at the end of the presentation here. All right, so pretty much right on time. What I wanted to look at now is the 3 responses that we got from our quiz. So basically, the questions that we have here is, I have to register my creative work with the Copyright Office for the copyright to be legal. So 2 of us knew that that was false and 1 said that it was true. So you don't have to register your copyright with the Copyright Office, but if you want to, it's pretty easy. You just go to copyright.gov and you click this and you go to register it. Our second one is, I can use anything to find on the internet in any way as long as it doesn't have a copyright symbol beside it. So we knew that that was false. You can't just use anything on the internet like you want to, unfortunately. And we also knew that Creative Commons licenses are enforceable. Usually at the end, a lot of my students talk a lot about plagiarism and trademarking, because those things do go kind of hand in hand. All of these things connect in different ways. And so if you're interested in Creative Commons, you may find that you would like to learn more about copyright, fair use, and public domain. Okay, so we are at about 10 minutes till, and I've been talking for a very long time. So I know there's only a few of us in here. So if you have any questions, if you want to put them in the chat, or if you'd like to pop out and talk to me, now's the time.
Thanks, Virginia. That was great.
Good.
Does anybody have any questions? You have a comment there in the chat there.
It says that I noticed Lawrence Lessig has a TED Talk, so maybe we can look that up. At the beginning of this year, January 1st, this is when things entered the public domain. They had a big party at the Internet Archive. So I'm hoping that that is what is close to that, what you're talking about, Lawrence Lessig. So let's see. We're going to do a search for it. So this one's 2014. Looks like you might have a lot. Oh.
And I learned this morning, if I'm not mistaken, that if you full screen that, we can hear it too. I don't think we can hear it if you don't full screen it.
So here's one from We Are Not Equal. This one might be pretty interesting. I don't know about that. If Carrie can share it with us, I could put it on the resource list, and then everyone would be able to have it later on.
That's a good idea.
I would be interesting to see. I wish that they would have like either live streamed or had some kind of way for us to be online for that party that they had.
And what was the party for again?
They at the Internet Archive, they had a huge party because of all the new materials that were going in the public domain. And it was in California, of course.
Of course it was.
Yeah. And I got an email about it, and I was like, that sounds great. And they had all day, like, speakers and all these different, educational opportunities. I was like, dang, why aren't they streaming any of this?
I bet they've got a video of it somewhere. Who was hosting it? Do you know?
Well, I believe it was with Creative Commons.
Was it?
So,
okay. Yeah. Nice.
I can look into it, though.
Yeah, that'd be great.
It's all a lot to take in. Everything that we talked about today is very much the high points. Okay, so we've got one. Do you have any expertise on book covers? I like to make graphics in Canva that feature children's pictures books that fit a theme. And so this is where it comes back to using your fair use checklist. So fair use, you can see I've already been there once before. So there is one that's through ALA that you can use. You go back to your 4 points of fair use. You're looking at your purpose. So you're making, wonderful, thank you for the YouTube link. So you're making these graphics that involve children's pictures books, but they are for teaching, they're for nonprofit educational institution work. You go through and you check this. You favor in fair use when you're using a published work. You are not affecting the market. Those are ways that you can sort of make your case for using those picture books. Now, if you decided to take those picture books, take the pictures of the covers and put them all over a t-shirt and sell them, it might be different. Yeah. And I can put this in our resource list, copy, so that you have it. Does anybody else have a question?
This was pretty rich stuff. Thank you, Virginia.
Yeah, it's a lot. April, I will put these slides on. I'll send them to the organizers, but I can also I'm going to put the link in there too. So I'll copy the link in the chat so you can get back to it. So there's a direct link to the presentation. We had another question along the same lines. Do you know resources about recording story time and reading aloud books? That is a little past my purview. I understand that that's a really good question. It kind of goes back to fair use again. The amount used, if you're reading the books, on and video recording them, I would say that that's when you need to start thinking about obtaining permission. That's usually where I skew before I say no, don't do that. I would say obtain permission. So it's in the same vein of audiobooks in a way. I would start obtaining permission. So I would reach out to the publisher, see what their restrictions are on reading these books aloud or taking videos of them in some way. That's what I would do as it goes to story time and videoing them. I hope that answers your question. It might not, but it's my best stab at it. And then the next one is, have you any resources specific to Creative Commons and music? That's a good question. So digital music and the different ways that we disseminate music these days is pretty radical, and it's moving and changing all the time. I know that you can use these licenses with music. So if you uploaded a digital file on your website, you could indicate it with the Creative Commons licenses. In particular, with YouTube, you have ways to tell people in the metadata of YouTube whether or not they can remix or share your music or not. And so it really kind of boils down to that, finding it, how you're sharing it, number one. So if you're using a platform that supports Creative Commons licenses, supports not just all rights reserved restrictions, then you can indicate it in that way. If you're putting it out into the world on your website, then you most definitely can say these are the ways that you can use it. But if you're just putting music on the internet in general, if you don't have anything beside it, remember it's already copyright protected. So from the beginning, you already automatically have copyright protection because it's in fixed form and it has originality and creativity. I hope that helps. Drilling down with music, it gets really nerve-wracking. That's definitely an onion that just pulls back and pulls back.
Yeah, no doubt.
Okay.
I knew that would be hard to answer fully.
Yeah, I don't think that I did, but those are good places to start.
Yeah, for sure. Anybody else have any other questions for Virginia before we wrap up?
Well, I appreciate everybody spending their Friday afternoon with me. I will post these slides to North Carolina Library Association, and if you have any questions, you can always get in touch with me as well. On the second slide, I have my email listed here, so just let me know if you need me.
Thanks so much, Virginia.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. All right. I think we're wrapping up the conference. Isn't this the last hour of it?
This is, yes.
Yeah. So I know that the conference organizers, I'm not actually one of them, I'm supporting, but are really happy to have had everybody here. Please don't hesitate to email people if you have questions. They will be collecting recordings and PowerPoints for everyone, as far as I know, and you should have all the information in the email that came out from Kelly McAllister. So thanks for coming, everybody, and hope y'all have a fantastic weekend and a good rest of your Friday afternoon. So okay. I'm going to close out the room.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, y'all take care. Bye.
Bye.